On this week's Gridiron Report, we have a State of the Union for the Detroit Red Wings and some player props for the Lions' upcoming season. It's all brought to you by our new friends over at Old Glory. Use promo code GRIT for 15% off any product at oldglory.com. Let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim, from the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the Gridiron Report, let the games begin.
Welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First All Detroit Sports Podcast presented by Mic Drop Studios. Today is Wednesday, August 26th, and Detroit sports are in a little bit of trouble here. We're not going to touch on the Tigers during this episode, even though we definitely could with their free fall that they are currently in, now very much looking on the outside of playoffs. But the Red Wings, who we haven't talked about in a long time, are also in a not so envious position here with the state of our captain, Larkin, still being on the trading block and not really moving anywhere, still having no GM. We haven't touched on it in a while just because we've had a lot to talk about, and there hasn't been a whole bunch of status updates with the Red Wings. So we decided one of the last weeks before we actually get, just full into football season, we should do a little State of the Union for the Red Wings. We're still going to mix in some Lions stuff after the break here, so don't worry about that. But State of the Union for the Red Wings, it's not looking great. I think we were all like a little bit optimistic, at least a little bit, when Yzerman, I don't even want to say was fired because he just was moved to a different position. Yeah, but I feel like stepped down into, failed upward, stepped down into a higher position. But like, I obviously that's never good, but optimistically, at least something was happening, right? We weren't just running it back with the same team and waiting for Yzerman to not make any moves at the deadline. So like, we were a little bit optimistic that something was going to happen. And now here we are, August 26th when this episode comes out, still no GM, and it's pretty bleak here for the old winged wheel.
For sure, man. Let's just zoom out just a second. You obviously mentioned the GM. Yzerman stepped down. If his name wasn't Steve Yzerman, if he hadn't done so much amazing things as a player, that probably would have been a firing, right? But, obviously the team's doing right by Yzerman by not promoting, whatever you want to call him, elevating him into that new role that he's in. So yeah, no GM. Your captain wants out. You mentioned Larkin, requested a trade on June 4th. And so now we sit here, it's getting into the end of August and still nothing has happened, right? And I don't think anything is going to happen until we have that GM. So like, it's kind of a logjam. You can't do anything as a franchise without a general manager, right? So no movement on the Larkin situation. I think what's probably going to happen is, once we get a new GM, they'll hopefully work things out, or potentially Larkin will, expand the teams that he wants to be traded to. If not, he's going to be a Red Wing. He's obviously under contract. So you have that. Then you have your one of your best defensemen, which I feel like this is kind of going under the radar. But Simon Edvinsson, he's a restricted free agent, and this is a good young player who plays a lot of minutes for you, a first line defenseman who you definitely want to extend, when you hit on a draft pick like that. And basically talks have stalled until we get a new GM. Again, nothing can happen until that happens. And just to put it in perspective, the time is ticking right now. I mean, training camp is mid-September. It's right around the corner. The opener, October 2nd against the Rangers. So we have almost no time. And we knew it was going to be pretty tight, when Yzerman steps down in the middle of the summer, but still, it's been 45 days since that has happened, and nothing's really happened since. So State of the Union is not great right now.
So there's a lot, there's so many different angles to this. You have the fact of the matter, just strictly sports wise, like you just mentioned, the time frame and the limited time we have, and can you still, I don't want to say salvage an off season, can you still turn this thing around and get everyone ready and on the same the same path, rowing the same way in that short amount of time. But then also there's the other side of that, how many relationships and how many bridges were burned with everything that happened. And we can get into Larkin himself. I know we touched on Larkin a little bit, when he officially requested the trade. We did an episode on that one, so you can go back to what you said early June and listen to that episode. But just last few days ago, we're recording this on the 24th. On the 21st, the Detroit Red Wings official Twitter account tweeted the NHL 27 ratings for quote unquote our guys, talking about, specifically Lucas Raymond, what he was overall, DeBrincat, what he was overall, Mo Seider and John Gibson were the four guys in which was on the graphic that the Detroit Red Wings tweeted out. Not that it matters. Lucas Raymond, 89 overall. Alex DeBrincat, 89 overall. Mo Sider, 89 overall. John Gibson, 85 overall, which I digress. John Gibson was really good for periods of the season last year, was kind of bad to start the year. So that's kind of high, I think, a little bit. But anyways, the main omission there obviously is your captain. There's no, and so it's like, he's human. If you see that, like, you got to understand, you kind of put people in this situation, but also, like, that's a huge omission, I should say. So, like, there's going to be bad blood even if it works out here. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. You have the kind of the main reason outside of us saying, like, yeah, we're getting into football here, so, like, we need to at least pull one episode or so about the Red Wings, update the hockey heads out there. You also had Mo Sider, who is kind of doing a really great job, in my opinion, as being, the unofficial captain during this time in which our captain is, right or wrong, trying to make moves for his own career. Mo was an alternate captain last year. Everyone kind of assumes he's going to be the new captain moving forward, if and when Larkin's no longer on this team. And he was over in Germany answering questions about the whole thing. What was the name of the event that he was at? Do you still have that up?
The NHL and NHL Players Association European Player Media Tour in Munich.
Oh my God, dude, that is that has to have an acronym or something, because there's no way they're saying that. But honestly, so that's why I said, like, when he was asked about this, that was a really good time. So I have some of these quotes in front of me of, like, what he was asked about. So asking about Larkin and the requesting of trades, he said, quote, "That wasn't exactly something you saw coming. Everyone certainly has their reasons for making certain decisions. Whether I or we approve of it is not for us to answer. But it's clear that we're a better team when Dylan Larkin is on the roster and playing than when he isn't." And I think he's really put in a tough situation here, because, like, you have to back your guy. They've been playing together for what, 6-7 years now, and as the expected captain, you have to answer it properly and professionally. But it does suck that your captain, one of the best guys on your team, isn't going to be playing with you. So I thought that was really interesting, the way he answered. I thought he answered it professionally. I thought he answered it backing kind of both sides, among other things. I thought he was answering his questions really well over there in that German event.
Dude, what I need to know, and I completely agree with you, man. Well said by Sider. I need to know, like, everyone else in the locker room, the Detroit Red Wings locker room, like, are they on Larkin's side, or are they, like, pissed at him for, their captain requesting the trade? Because I could see it go both ways. Like, I mean, these guys live and breathe it every day. Like, they know what may have gone down with Yzerman, on if they were fans of Yzerman or not, on his leadership style, if they were kind of I don't want to say it's just Team Yzerman or Team Larkin, but that's kind of what it was pitted against. So I'm so curious how our locker room, like, is responding to all this, because I think that's really telling. If all the players are, like, turning on Larkin, then I think the only thing that we can do is trade him, because otherwise it's just going to be locker room cancer. No one's gelling. I don't see that as being likely. I will say, like, I feel like the players generally have their backs. Like, hockey players have each other's backs probably more than any other professional sport. So I'd like to think that these guys are still, like, on Larkin's side and being like, hey, I get it, man. You're giving your all. It's not been enough. We've been shit. Like, go request a trade. It's okay. So I don't know. I think, like, whichever way the rest of our locker room is leaning, that's probably where this new GM, whoever it is, should probably lean. But yeah, more to be seen with Larkin. Like, as of right now, he's not holding out or anything. There's nothing to hold out yet, right? Camp hasn't started. So as of right now, he's still very much on the team until he's not, right? I think it just all comes down to getting that GM. Sider also talked about, the front office, or I guess he was asked about the Red Wings front office, and he basically deferred it, very much player speak, but in a smart way. Like, he said it's meant to be decided by management and not him as a player. So yeah, I tend to agree. Like, that's not on him to comment. Like, our shit show it's not for him.
Yeah, exactly. I said it's on ownership there, which leads me to believe that, and I think if Yzerman was doing everything that we wanted him to be doing, like going all in, and there's obviously a fine, happy line of, like, going all in and doing something irresponsible, right? Going too far in. Like, there's a happy line there for sure, but they haven't even come really close to finding that line, and they definitely haven't gone over it into the irresponsible area. So I feel like if he was even closer to that line, and he as in Chris Ilitch, Steve Yzerman, then I think that maybe there could be just a little bit more maybe a little bit more frustration on like towards Larkin and less understanding, just because I think everyone is like, yeah, this really sucks, and like it sucks that it's going out this way. Now, I'm not talking about Larkin and his very, very minimal trade candidate list. That's shitty of him. That's terrible. But like him asking out, I think, like you said, I think I have to assume the locker room ideology is like, we get it. Like, you've been here, you're one of the most tenured guys here, if not the most tenured guy here. They're not doing what they need to do every year. Now, granted, that's why this is so confusing and so difficult, because technically they have gotten better every year. Last season was the most points they've put up in a season since Yzerman took over. So like they have gotten better every single year. It just happened to be in a year that we were right there. We had another meltdown that like fans and players are just tired of seeing, and it just was an extremely difficult NHL and an extremely difficult division. And so like it's a really hard fine line to walk. Now, looking ahead, I don't know who they're going to be. You and I are definitely not the most qualified people here to sit here and be like, well, we should be looking at so-and-so from this organization, and so-and-so's a player scout, or a player scout for the, whatever team. Like, he'd be a great GM in waiting. Like, we're just not those hockey heads. We're not that invested. I don't know if you have anyone. I definitely don't. But what I will say is you have someone?
I got a couple, yeah. I think just
Okay.
a couple tidbits before. I thought this was interesting. There was a report like a couple weeks ago that Chris Ilitch has hired an outside firm to do the headhunting and all the due diligence behind finding the new GM. And that outside firm, Turnkey ZRG, the founder formerly worked for Ilitch and Ilitch Sports and Entertainment. So like, I mean, that's as inside as an outside firm could possibly get, right? So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. I don't want to read too much into it, haven't, but that was something. And I guess just like, who's actually making the decision, and then like who could we potentially get? There has been some names that have been thrown out there, but basically it's on Chris Ilitch, to formally make the decision, right? I mean, I think this firm is going to give like their recommendation, and they're going to be completing the interviews. I know, couple candidates that stick out to me. Brett Peterson, assistant GM for the Florida Panthers. You have to think that the assistant GM was at least involved in like the Kachuk trade, Brad Marchand trade, Seth Jones. Like the Panthers have just been making moves year in and year out, just getting better and better. Granted, it's easier to do it right in Florida. There's no state income tax, but still, yeah, that's definitely one name. A name that I just don't really want would be Jeff Greenberg, the GM of the Detroit Tigers. Like I don't know, an in-house job, just or an in-house move, I should say. It doesn't scream like, yeah, we're ready to, pull our big boy pants up and make some hard decisions as a franchise. That kind of just seems like, slap a Band-Aid on it, keep it in house. I wouldn't like that. A couple other ones. I think Darren Yorkie, I don't know how he pronounces his last name. Again, assistant GM this time for the Carolina Hurricanes. 17 years with the Canes, and like these guys have just learned how to win. Obviously just winning the cup. Running the amateur scouting there too. I think he's like really into like the sabermetrics and the advanced stats, which I think will be a big help to us, especially as we've kind of swung and missed on quite a few draft picks over the years. Again, Tyler mentioned it. We're not even pretending to be experts in this job search, but like I think there are some pretty good options, and I guess the only good thing about being so late in this process, like, usually if you fire your GM, it's going to be like halfway through the season. You got like plenty of runway. Obviously, we didn't do that. The good thing is there's no other jobs that are open right now. Like it's just the Red Wings GM job. So, if one of these guys wants to take a swing and, get promoted to a general manager role, or I think we might be going for, a head of hockey operations, whatever you want to call it. This is probably a good time. So there is some talent out there.
Okay, I mean, hey, hand up. Shame on me for assuming, because I didn't have any of those guys. You at least had a few guys that I didn't, so shame on me for assuming that neither one of us knew everyone. But yeah, what I was making my way towards was the fact that they're kind of bringing in some of the Detroit Tigers team to help make this decision, which is not something I think a lot of people want to hear. Just we like Scott Harris. I think the jury's still a little bit out on him. We opened the show with the Tigers being in a free fall, but like they've drafted pretty well, and they just don't have very good trade deadlines. But either way, like I don't think necessarily going to your other franchise that people have been pretty frustrated with over the last few years to help out this franchise that people are frustrated with is exactly the way to go. But you mentioned the turnkey ZRG law firm that's going to help them. They do have a little bit of experience in the searching candidacies. They help find different positions for the Vegas Golden Knights, Atlanta Hawks, Miami Dolphins. So kind of across all different sports, trying to find the hiring of different executives in different positions. So they have experience doing that. And I mean, the last thing is like, I'm just looking through some of these notes, and like the Nashville Predators needed 4 months to decide on who was going to be their president of hockey operations, and we're going on day 40. So it's not necessarily the length of time that is definitely the most concerning. It's just the time. Like when the Nashville Predators took 4 months to decide if McFarland was going to be the president of hockey operations, they had their the previous guy stepped down on February 2nd, and they announced McFarland on June 2nd. So like that time frame, while long, in a very different point in time in the season and in the year, not right after the draft, and then also like leading up to training camp. So I don't know. Reports are they want to have someone in place by September 17th, which is the start of training camp, like you mentioned. But they got to get moving on it. Right now, it's just assistant GM Sean Horcroft in the position right now. And I don't know enough about Sean Horcroft to say whether he is the right guy for the position. I know right now he has no authority to make any trades. He's literally just doing the day-to-day, trying to keep the team somewhat ready to to be ready for training camp. But I'll let someone else who's much more into the day-to-day let me know if Sean Horcroft is the guy for the team, because at this rate maybe they're just going to have no one and just have to go with the guy who's already in the role at the moment. I don't know.
Yeah, and dude, again, this goes beyond just like the Larkin issue that needs to be solved, and you can't really solve it until you have a GM. I think this maybe just as important, if not more, is Simon Edvinsson, and not being able to lock him down. Just look at a guy like Bowen Byram from Chicago, just signing a 6-year deal, $12.5 million per year, kind of a comparable defenseman to Edvinsson. So yeah, I don't know if that's like necessarily going to be resetting the market there, but like every day that this deal doesn't get done, it might cost you more, right, to sign it to extend a guy like Edvinsson's. There's so much at stake right now. The timing is tough. I think DeBrincat might be due for an extension too. I don't know if maybe they can wait until after the season for that, but yeah, it's tough, man, because you don't really know exactly what direction this team wants to go. If they want like a mini rebuild, if they want to just add to the existing roster, try to go all in, make the playoffs, make a push. That depends on if you want to, extend a guy like DeBrincat or let him walk, trade him, a guy who is probably towards the end of his prime or, right in the middle. And if you're going into a rebuild, he's probably not going to be there on the other end of it. So yeah, there's so much at stake right now. It's just a really pivotal point for the Detroit Red Wings, and we have no one to make those decisions right now.
So let me ask you this, because they were talking about this on Sports Radio this morning, and it was a good conversation. It made me think. Before we wrap up the Red Wings State of the Union, jump to some Lions stuff. Say we get this hire right in the eyes of our players. Larkin, he's fine with it, whatever, or he's maybe not fine with it, but we can't get that because we don't have to trade him. Obviously, we can't find a different trade partner. Maybe we say like, hey, we'll either A, expand your list, or B, we'll talk to you at the trade deadline. All that to say, Larkin comes back. Do you let your captain continue to be your captain while he's kind of pulling all this? Does it depend on how he comes back, and if he's still he's all the way back in because of the hire and we're good to go, or is it a different answer if he comes back and is still like, okay, well, I know I have to report, let me report, and then I still want to trade, still here's my teams? Or do you make that move to Mo Seider, like who's the obvious captain in waiting, who's kind of been riding the ship while Larkin is doing this? Man,
it's so tough. I don't know if there's like a perfect answer. I would love to think that like Larkin comes back and completely like, he comes out on record and saying I'm back all in, like this will never happen again. Like I don't think that's likely. It's just if you request a trade, you request a trade for a reason. Like you probably want out. So I don't know. It would suck to strip the captainship from your captain, then he's still on the team, and like then it's just so awkward and weird, and the vibes are bad in the locker room. It's a bad situation regardless. Shit, I don't know, man. I definitely don't want to strip him of his captainship, because for that very reason, like it would just be a shit show and it would lead to nothing but more pain and misery for us.
I think I don't. There is no right answer. I think if gun to my head, I had to pick one. I think it would depend on how he does come back. In the chance he does come back, I think it depends on how he comes back. Like I said, if he's 1 foot out the door coming back, as in like, no, you hired this new guy, great. I hope you guys do well here, but I don't want to be here, and I'm not expanding my teams. So half in the door, half out the door. He's an athlete. Like, you can't say these guys aren't going to try. Like, he's definitely going to go out there and try, but he's always going to be, looking elsewhere and 1 foot out the door, 1 foot in the door, whatever. So I think if he comes like kind of back like that, then it's a real discussion. And I think maybe you lean on, you got to see like the relationships to see if there is a way to amicably do that and be like, listen, you got to understand, like, you are half out the door. You can't be captain, see how that conversation would go. But I agree with you. I think if he is full back, 2 feet in, and we buy it, because he might just come out and say that and still be looking elsewhere. But and we buy it, and he's all in with the whoever the new guy we bring in is, and we're good to go. I'm fine with him keeping it and being like, yeah, the fans were mad about the front office too. He decided to put his foot down. Like, can't fault the guy for that. I'm not mad at him. I'm gonna say let him keep the C if that's the case. If he comes back, like you said, all back in. If he comes back 1 foot out the door, it's a discussion that maybe you need to sense to see how those relationships are being repaired. See if there's any way to have that adult conversation. Be like, hey, dude, Mo is the guy for the job. You're out the door pretty much. Like, let's do this amicably. We're still going to try and look for that trade, but let's give Mo the reins while you're still here. So it's yet to be seen. We'll have to see. Okay, let's go to a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to, because we're addicted to football, we're going to jump back into football. We're going to go through some season player props for the Detroit Lions this upcoming season. All right, welcome back. We are through the State of the Union for the Detroit Red Wings. Again, we hadn't really talked on them for the last few weeks just because we're getting into training camp for the Lions. The Tigers randomly got hot. They had their trade deadline, a little more than a month ago. So we had a lot to talk about over the last few weeks. And the only news with the Red Wings that is still news today is that there is no news, and that's what's making it worse. So there wasn't all that we had to cover. So we wanted to get at least one little segment in there for all the hockey heads out there. But we're right back to the bread and butter here. We're right back into football. We have a lot coming up over the next few weeks, really getting into football. But until we do that, we have just a little season player prop for the Detroit Lions guys, right?
Yeah, yes, sir, man. Lions over-under. I have 6 over-unders, all kind of a consensus of, your DraftKings and your FanDuel, your Vegas, whatever. And, if we have time, I do have more locked and loaded. So, without further ado, man, first one, I think some of these lines are particularly juicy, by the way. So, Jared Goff passing yards. Over under 4,099 and a half passing yards for Jared Goff in 2026.
4,099 and a half. So is he going to touch 5,000 passing yards?
No, 4,100 would be. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
4,099.
Gotcha. Okay, so just looking at some of his previous numbers, just thinking, because you have these names, I don't have these names in front of me. Just looking at his last few season numbers in front of me. So last year, passing yards, he had 4,564. The year before that, he had 4,629. Year before that, 4,575. So 3 straight years of 4,500 plus passing yards. The year before that, he finished just under at 4,438, so about 460 or so, 62 passing yards short. And then the year before that, first year in Detroit, he was back down to 3,200, and then staying around the 3,500s. So now it's going back to the Rams days. So really, since this offense got humming outside of his first year here in Detroit, he has pretty much averaged a minimum of 4,500 plus. And going back to last year, we had half the season last year with Johnny Morton, who was, he was not very good at his job, and that's the reason we let him go midway through the season, and Dan Campbell took back over. So even with half the season being terrible play calling, in which we were like, what is going on here? He still finished with 4,564 passing yards last year. I think that's a steep drop off, and I know he's obviously in his 32 age season, I think it is. He was 31 last year. I don't know if he's turned 32 yet, but he's going to be right around his 32 age season. To go from averaging 4,500 to then suddenly dropping down to 4,100, I think there'd have to be a pretty significant injury in there, significant games missed in order to drop down that much. And if he's been at nothing, he's been consistent and healthy in his tenure here in Detroit, knock on wood. So I'm gonna say over. I think he steps down from his 45-64 last year. but I don't think he drops all the way down to below 41.
It's interesting to see that Vegas has priced it at that 4,100. Just, yeah, considering what you just broke down, the body of work over the last like 3 or 4 seasons, which has been fantastic for Jared Goff. I just did the quick math. Like, that's basically 23, 24 yards less per game that Jared would have to, get to that 4,100 except instead of the 45, whatever that he's been hovering at. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely over on that as well. Again, maybe they're pricing in a game missed or something, which if that happens, then probably all bets are off for the over there. But I'm over as well. Okay, next one.
Let me just real quick. What do you? Because that would be 4,100 would be going back, not including his first season in the league at age just 22. He only played 7 games in which he finished with just over 1,000 yards. Not including that one, that would be his third worst season in his career, and like I said, the worst he's had in the last 6 or 7 years. At what age do you think a steep drop off like that for a quarterback would happen? I mean, he's again 32 years old. I feel like for that steep of a drop off, like you said, it's kind of interesting. Vegas had it that steep. I think he has at least another, I would say, 2 years before you would probably expect a drop off like that to go down to almost a career low.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like, it just seems like these quarterbacks, they're aging like fine wine into their, early mid 30s, even like seems like late 30s is just not really a problem for these guys.
Exactly.
Like they're just getting better and better. So factor that with, Jared Goff being probably the least mobile quarterback in the league. He's not really taking too many hits. If he is, it's because he's getting sacked, which obviously is going to happen, right? Hopefully less this year than last year. But yeah, I and again, like a 4,100 season is still solid. I mean, it's not that much of a drop off, but I don't know where Vegas is going there. I think just considering the weapons that we have, and, again, Gibbs in the backfield, which, like, he's going to be running routes too. Yeah, I definitely see the over.
Okay. Yeah, I just had to fit that in to see where we think that would happen, because I agree with you. Quarterbacks nowadays, 32 is not young, but for a non-mobile quarterback, it's definitely not old. So I'm surprised it's that low. But okay, let's get to the next one.
Next one. Okay, so Amon-Ra St. Brown receptions over under 104.5. And just for perspective, last year, he had 117 grabs for 1,401 yards.
I'm doing the same process I just did with Jared, just because we've had a lot of turnover and a lot of changes with this offense over the last few years. We've seen the physical play calling be changed. We've seen a lot of turnover. Yeah, we came in at somewhat of a very young, but also having very old veterans on the team a few years ago, when you had the combination of like going back to like Panay's rookie and sophomore year, combining that with, older Taylor Decker and Kevin Zeitler, so you had a good combination of young and old. You now have your old guys have all been moved on. You have the young guys who are no longer, they're definitely not old, but they're no longer just young guys. So we've seen a lot of play calling turnover, but also a lot of personnel turnover. And similar to Jared, Amon-Ra is, and we've said this before, it's just a very much a safety blanket. His numbers are very steady across all of those offensive changes and offensive struggles over the last few years. So you mentioned 117 receptions last year, 115 receptions the year before, 119 receptions the year before that. So that's back-to-back-to-back years of like pretty much on pace, exactly what he'd done the year before. That's 16 gains in 2024 or 2023, excuse me. And then obviously 17 in 2024 and 17 in 2025. This one is much more of a pick'em. Like, I think the Jared Goff one was an easy over. I think just because he was not going to drop that low. I think he can still be on track and play exactly how he played last year, but still drop below that number. So I'm gonna say over on that one too. I think he's just a safety blanket, and I can't take an under on a safety blanket. If it was, gonna be looking at maybe a career high, like I don't see him putting up a 120-24 season, or something like that high. I think he's gonna be right around his average for the last 3 years, and that's right around where that line is. And so, being the safety blanket that he is, I'm gonna say over.
Yeah, this is a guy who just, I think we mentioned it maybe last pod, but he takes care of his body. I mean, obviously injuries can happen, right? But it just seems like he's got that durability. And even if he's missing a game, his best season from a reception standpoint actually was 3 years ago when he did miss a game. Or, well, I guess maybe he actually might not have missed a game. That might have been,
was it before 17?
Yeah, that might have been before we went to 17-game season. It probably was, but still 119 receptions in 16 games in 2023. So, yeah, again, Vegas is definitely pricing these guys, significantly lower than we've seen in the past like 3 years. I am definitely going over 104.5 on ASRBs, ARSBs. I've gotten that wrong like 8 times in a row the last 8 pods. I need to get back in midseason form, but I'm definitely going over on St. Brown.
So I'll say real quick. I'll say this, hand up. 104.5 was it? I must have been pulling up his numbers when you said that, because I heard something much higher. 104. I think he's gonna, because I was thinking that's gonna be a little bit closer than the Goff. I think Goff is gonna blow past his 4,100 essentially, and I was thinking that Amon-Ra is gonna be right around his average for the last few years, which when I must have misheard you when you said that, because I thought he was gonna be around there. I think it's gonna blow past 104. The one thing that is striking me from his numbers over the last few years, just looking at this, so you mentioned his best season 2 years ago when he had 119 catches for 1,515 yards, 15-15. He had a success rate that season of 61.6. Last year, his numbers dropped just a tiny bit. 115 receptions for 1,263 total yards. His success rate went up, though, to 70.2. The one that really stood out to me, and this was a theme for last year. You and I talked about it on a lot of episodes last year, and I think even we got in a little bit of trouble online for people not being happy that we were calling this out. Last year, he finished right in between both of those with 117 catches, like you mentioned, for essentially 1,400 yards. But his success rate dropped down, again, from 70.2 to 54.7, which is a tremendous drop-off. That was his that was the worst of his entire career going back to 2021. And we mentioned he was having really uncharacteristic dropping issues last year that we had never really seen before from him. He famously stays around and catches out of the jugs every single game, every single practice, every single game. So like that was an issue that we hadn't had issues with. And so if he even normalizes his success rate, I think it's easy. He's going to be right there on like the 117 like it was last year. Like if he normalized his success rate and had his numbers last year at like 60% even or something like that, he would have blown past 117 and probably would have been in the 120s, 125. So I think that's something to take into consideration too. Better play calling this year, similar to Jared Goff, and I hope he's going to have his uncharacteristic drop issues figured out that he had last year.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, moving on. Next one. Again, I do think this is a bit low. So yeah, maybe interesting that Vegas is just bearish on the Lions in general. But Jameson Williams receiving yards over under 924.5 for JMO in 2026.
What was that? I'm sorry, 94.
924 and a half.
924 and a half.
For context, last year 1,117 receiving yards, and I think he was just over 1,000 the year before that too, if memory serves.
Yep. So it was back-to-back season with 1,000 yards. He had 1,001 yards in 2024, and then you just mentioned 1,117. So this is a steep drop-off again. Not looking at, I don't want to look at his first 2 seasons in the NFL, especially not his first one. He had 1 target for 41 yards in 2022, that's crazy. I'm just looking at that. That's crazy that he was that underutilized. 9 targets for 1 reception. That's crazy. But in 2023, he had 354 yards. So he clearly, while he played 12 games that season, he had a lot of his, I think the year he had his suspension issues. And so you don't really want to count those 2. You count the last 2. That's a pretty steep drop off to be back into the low 900s. Man, I don't want to say over on all these guys, but because we had a really good offense 2 seasons ago, one of the best offenses in NFL history, and that kind of would just put us back to that if we do go over on these. I figured there would be some number in here about Jameson Williams. And I saw this stat on Twitter that I thought was really interesting that would lead us to saying he's going to be right around the 1,000, whether he breaks 1,000, not sure, but right around there. So last year in weeks 1 to 7, under Johnny Morton, which we already talked about, he was a guy that hindered Jared Goff himself and, just didn't really know how to utilize the tools we had. Jameson Williams had 17 catches for 289 yards. Again, this is weeks 1 through 7, so a good sample size. 17 catches, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, with an average depth of target of 15.2 yards, which put him at about, fantasy-wise, wide receiver 42. Jameson Williams in weeks 9 through 18, so just the second half of the season, when Dan Campbell took over play calling, he had 48 catches, 828 yards, and 5 touchdowns, with an average depth of target of 11.5, putting him at wide receiver 5. So all that to say, we were begging for Johnny Moe to use Jamison Williams much more, and he just wasn't. Even though he was using him deeper, the average depth of target, even though it was much smaller sample size, 17 receptions to 48, was larger, 15.2 yards downfield when they were being targeted to just 11.5 when Dan Campbell was calling plays. Dan Campbell was calling his number and utilizing him much more similar to what we were seeing with Ben Johnson when he was really the weapon that he saw. And Dan Campbell's not making the play calls this season. We know that. But he's definitely going to be more involved than Johnny Morton. And it definitely can't be as bad as Johnny Morton was. And Petzing is known for a really great running game. But then they brought in, what was his name, Kafka or someone from the Giants to act as kind of like a co-offensive coordinator, be specifically the passing game coordinator. And so I think it's similar to Amon-Ra St. Brown. We just said, like, if he even were just to eliminate his random drops that he had, his numbers would have been even crazier last year. Last year, if you eliminate the massive underusage of Jamison Williams for half the season, his numbers would have crushed his 1,117. So I see it maybe regressing a tiny bit, but I still see it hovering right around the 1,000. And so I'm going to take over on this as well.
It's tough, man, but I am going over. I think this is finally the season where we just see not only just a full season of Jamison Williams, but a full season of us being able to utilize him to his full potential. And I think he's going to be borderline unguardable. We've seen it in camp, and granted, it's just camp, but he is just cooking fools left and right. And again, our secondary, even our starters, are really nothing to write home about. Unfortunately, I just think it's going to be a big season for Jamison Williams. And again, there's a big if. Maybe Vegas is pricing in, a little bit of that risk of him missing games, either due to suspension or, obviously injury could happen to anyone. But I don't know if that's, a risk that they price in. Could be, but I see another 1,000-yard season for him. So yeah, 924.5. I'm smashing the over on that as well. So
yeah,
just a couple more.
We had the best offense in the world because we're taking over on all these guys. But hey, we'll see.
Well, granted, this is the team that scored more points last season than almost any other, right? Like I don't think we were number one, but certainly we were flirting with top 5. I know 2024 season they were the number 1 offense. So yeah, this is a team that likes to move the ball, and especially a team that on defense could struggle. And you got to be putting up points on offense to kind of keep up. Could be in a lot of track meets. I definitely like the overs there. So this is a tough one, maybe for me at least. This is probably the hardest one of the bunch. But our star running back who just got paid, Jahmyr Gibbs, rushing yards over under 1,199.5. For context, last year Gibbs 1,223 yards on 243 carries.
And say one more time what the over-under number was?
1,199.5. So that's 23.5 yards less than his season last year.
Yeah, interesting enough. Almost the exact same with Jared Goff. So this one, you're right. This one is hardest because there is so much. This is obviously the most change, other than like the offensive line, which has to do with this. This is the most change, I think, out of at least on the offense, these last few that we talked about, Jared Goff, Jamison Williams. Like the receiving core didn't really change. Obviously the running game, it was going to play into the receiving game, but like we know who and what Amon-Ra St. Brown is. We know who and what Jamison Williams is when he gets utilized properly. Jared Goff, we definitely know who he is. Again, a question mark comes out the offensive line, but Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously you lost David Montgomery. He last year, as you and I correctly pointed out, it was likely gonna going into the season. We knew it was gonna be less of a 1A, 1B, and be a 1 and 2 essentially with David Montgomery, which it definitely was. But at the same time, his numbers, his yards still went down from 14-12 to 12-23 last year. So it's interesting, and we had the difference in changing of guards with the play calling and the offensive coordinator. But again, as I just mentioned with Jamison Williams, Drew Petzing is supposedly is really great offense or running game coordinator, and to kind of offset that, they had to bring in someone else to make sure we're not just running the ball too much. And the offensive line has to be a little bit better than last year, but I'm not certain that it is with Cade Mays going down, as we just discussed last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't know, dude. I'm truly stumped. You know why I'm so stumped? I'm so stumped because I want to say over, and it's like one of those things where like you answer A 5 times in a row on a test, and you're like, and the next answer you're like, you actually think it's A, but you're like, well, there's no way it was A this many times in a row. And it's like when you're picking, overs on team overall schedule and wins and stuff like that. You can't pick everyone to win because someone has to lose. I don't necessarily think he touches what he put up last year at 1,223, but I don't think he drops down that much, 23 yards per game. I got to take the over again.
It's got to be an over for me. And for me, it's because, again, assuming he's playing all 17 games, 250 attempts in 2024, 243 attempts in 2025. Now you're the guy. No more David Montgomery. Like, I think that his touches are probably going to be closer to, 265, 270 attempts this season. And so, like, again, if he stays on the field, he's a guy who's averaged basically 5 yards per carry in his career. Could be a little bit north of that, could be a little less, but either way, like, you do the math and that puts you well over 1,300 yards. So this is another one where it's, especially everything considered, on paper, the Lions have upgraded their offensive line. Granted, already dealing with injuries, sick, but yeah, it just looks like a spot where Jahmyr Gibbs is going over. I mean, this is going to be just a sensational season for him. So I am with you. I'm going over again. Just a couple more. We're doing pretty good on time, but let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. This is a defensive line that has actually gotten improved, and in the preseason, these guys have just been they've been stars. They've been doing everything. And so we're gonna go Aiden Hutchinson, individual sacks, over under 13.5 in 2026. Last season, 14.5 for Hutch.
So he had 14.5. So again, man, the Lions were not. They weren't very good last year. We know they were better than probably their record showed. I think in one score games 2 years ago they were like 7-3, and last year they were 2-5. So like we just didn't close out certain games. Like we knew we were better than our record showed last year. But Vegas has us being a lot worse this upcoming year just with his individual. Like we didn't have that many guys going well above and beyond, unless Vegas thinks that these are the guys and their numbers were the reason we were even slightly good and won a few games, and so they're naturally going to regress, and everyone else maybe will be a little bit better, or they're just Vegas thinks we're going to naturally very much regress. Let's see, 14.5 sacks last year. He that's basically back-to-back years in which he was on track to put up a whole hell of a lot of sacks until he obviously went down with his injury in 2024. I'm going to take over. I think this defensive line has gotten a lot better, like you mentioned, and I think we've seen him do a lot more having all the attention. Now that's a heavy asterisk similar to Jahmyr Gibbs on like the offensive line. If the offensive line can't stay healthy and they are just absolute shit, then Jahmyr Gibbs' number is going to fall. Same thing's going to kind of apply with Aiden Hutchinson. If the help that we got him is not enough help and they can't perform, then I think he's going to be right around the like 12.5 area. But I'm going to take over.
And I'm with you on the over. And really just because we've had so many guys who look like they're blossoming right in front of our eyes, who will be playing alongside Hutch, maybe on that other end of the defensive side of the ball. So I just think that, at least I hope that Hutch is going to be maybe seeing a few less double teams this year, just knowing that we probably have some more options on the other defensive end position. And he's going to be a monster. He's going to get after the ball for sure in the quarterback. And I think 13.5 is a smash. I could see as high as, a 17 sack season. Like it's within his grasp. So yeah, over on that. Last one for me. And I think we have been over on all of these. Again, call us just classic Lions homer fans, whatever. But I just feel like these lines are a little bit too juicy. So last one, Lions team wins over under 10.5 this season.
Yeah. So we're going to be getting into, let's see, next week we're going to be doing college football, Michigan State. The week after is the first start. It's going to be back to our real bread and butter with breaking down, doing the previews for games. Obviously, we'll have no review because it's going to be week one. We won't have much to review, but we're going to use that time to do our expected most improved player, MVP, stuff like that. We're going to then obviously make our prediction, overall record and stuff like that. So we'll do a little more in depth of like games and where we're going to end up in the division. Over under 10.5. I think the record or the schedule is just so easy because of the games that we lost last year without having it exactly in front of me and going line by line. I think we end up with 11. I think we end up with 11 wins. I'm going to take the over on it and complete the queen sweep on that and say over on absolutely everything. Call it the Detroit Lions homer parlay. Take over on everything.
Yeah, and hell, maybe we should do that. Maybe just for content for the people to maybe get rich. Yeah, just
Real quick, I did that 2 years ago, and the only one that, and it was probably a 10 prop parlay. It was all overs for Lions. It was the Lions make the Super Bowl parlay. The only one that didn't hit of the 10 was Dan Campbell, Coach of the Year, and he got robbed of it. He should have won it, and he got robbed of it. And my parlay lost because he did not win Coach of the Year. So it can happen.
What was the payout on it? Is this like are we talking about like a $10
This was like
bet
a fiver.
Yeah,
like it was like a fiver to bring home like 5-10 grand or something. Yeah. It was nice.
My God, dude! I knew you threw that down. I didn't realize that the payout was actually that big on that. I think we should cook up something for the listeners, for ourselves. Yeah, maybe I don't know if it hits. Maybe we do something fun for or with the listeners. But I'm with you on this one. Lions team wins. Like, it's got to be over 10.5. The schedule is very easy. And granted, it's any given Sunday, and you really never know how any of these teams could pan out on year over year. A team that could be, a candy win, and that we're looking at in August could actually turn out to be a really hard game if they end up firing on all cylinders. So all that's to say, 11 wins, 12, 13, I think is still, it's definitely in the cards. So certainly higher than 10.5. I am with you. So yeah, that was Lions over under. Again, Tyler and I, just straight homers, going over on every single pick. There were a couple that were difficult. I think there were a couple that were easier. Again, it's all dependent on injuries at the end of the day and how the team performs. But yeah, hopefully that gets you a little bit fired up. The listeners, I should say, that football is right around the corner. We can taste it. It's already end of August. NFL's back.
NFL is absolutely back. Appreciate it. That's a fun segment. We're homers. All right, let's wrap up the show with some Grit of the Week. Before we do that, you guys know Grit of the Week is brought to you by our new friends at Old Glory. Old Glory is the ultimate destination for officially licensed merchandise, offering over 300,000 items for music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture fans. In addition to its vast music and sports apparel section, Old Glory offers products that celebrate entertainment, TV shows, movies, lifestyle brands, from quirky gifts to fan-favorite apparel. There's something for everyone, whether you're a Detroit Lions fan like us, and that's why you're listening, whether you're just finding us on social media and you're a huge deadhead or something. Old Glory has everything that you need. Our listeners can use our exclusive discount GRIT at checkout for 15% off any product. Again, that's discount code GRIT, GRIT, for 15% off any product at oldglory.com. I'm going to kick us off this week. I'm not sure where you're going. It is very possible we're going to the same spot because this is the dead time in most sports, so we have very limited places to go. I'm doubling down. I gave my Grit of the Week out to Bryce Rainier last week. I'm doubling down to Bryce Rainier again this week. Last week I mentioned he got the call up to a high A ball for the Detroit Tigers. Was on a great streak, a hitting streak there. If you break down some of his swings and stuff, you can actually see the physical changes that he's made in his swings. A lot less movement in his hands. He's able to kind of slow things down, and he has been absolutely cooking the last few weeks. He just sets the high A West Michigan Tigers organization history, hitting 5 home runs in a row. 5 different games in a row he hit home runs. He is now slashing, again, for Western Michigan, since called up. He has 16 home runs, again, 5 of those being in a row. Still hitting only .270, which is his second best batting average in his young career, but his 16 home runs is quite on tear. Has an OPS of 861. So Bryce Rainier, I doubled down on you last week, or I gave it to you last week. I got double down on you this week. 5 home runs in a row. Setting Western Michigan history is going to get that for you. So shout out to Bryce Rainier.
Shout out Bryce Rainier. Shout out to you for being ahead of the curve there. I think at the time you were throwing out the Grit of the Week last week, and you only hit it 2 in a row, and then you just blast 3 more after that, or whatever it was. That was absolutely awesome. No, I am going elsewhere, actually. My Grit of the Week, Cade Cunningham. There was just announced, I think yesterday, the I don't know, I guess you can call it the news broke. It's not really news, but Cade Cunningham is leading a players run minicamp in San Diego this week, sources told ESPN. I feel we've talked about this a lot, but I don't think this is something that just every leader on the team is doing, getting the boys together for a player run minicamp. Granted, I could be completely wrong. Maybe this happens at every single team. I just don't hear about it, but I just feel like we say time and time again, just how good Cade Cunningham is on and off the field. Like, he's the absolute leader that you want on your team. He's just an all-around good guy, good father, not problematic at all. It's really cool to see. And for a team that won 60 games last year, I still think they feel like they weren't even close to reaching their full potential. And 60 wins in the regular season just wasn't enough to get it done. Obviously flaming out in the playoffs, just not playing well. They know they have to improve. And I just think it's really cool that, your leader, your quote unquote captain. Like, I know obviously they don't have captains in basketball like they do in maybe other sports, but still, like, Cade Cunningham is your leader. It's to see him organize, a players-led minicamp. Granted, you couldn't pick a better place than San Diego, especially this time of year. But I just think it speaks volumes, man. Cade's our boy. Cade's our star boy. We say it all the time, but he's just doing the little things to hopefully get this team ready even better than last year.
You don't need to ever convince me to give Cade Cunningham a grit of the week, so I'm happy that you went with him. He is, like, not just for Detroit, like, he is so good for the city, so perfect for the city, but also, like, if you're just an NBA fan or a fan of good basketball, like, he's the perfect guy to grow up, like idolizing, because, like you said, no history of any controversy, doesn't play the game the wrong way, he gets his players involved. It's just an all-around, just an amazing guy, great leader and everything, and we'll learn a lot about this team after the reports of these training camps come out, because we'll learn if Jalen Duren is doing a full holdout or if he's going to be included in, and balling with his guys and see, what the deal is going to be there. So we'll learn a lot about that. And I personally think that they overperformed last year. I think I've said that on this podcast before. I don't think they were a 60-win team, and I think that showed by almost losing in the first round. It took an injury to Franz Wagner in order to get out of the first round. So I think they overperformed, and so I think the offseason should have been over for quite some time for these guys. I saw another video. He was just the other day was down at University of Miami working out and practicing. I know another guy is down there a lot practicing and playing, and Malik Beasley. I don't know if he was there or playing with him. But all that to say, I think we overperformed last year, and I think it's great that these guys are getting the work in going early, and the schedule's out now, so we know when we're starting. I think that the Pistons are kicking off the NBA league here shortly. I think they're one of the first teams to be playing. I'm sure we'll break down that here shortly. But yeah, you'll never have to convince me about why Cade Cunningham deserves a grit of the week. He gets my career or lifetime goal grit of the week for that. So
hell yeah. And okay. You're right. We do play on opening night for the first time in I think 10 seasons. So that's pretty sick.
We're gonna have to find some time in between this Detroit Lions stuff coming up here to talk about the Pistons and their schedule that got broken out. But we'll find time about that. Don't you worry. But all right, that's our show. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. You can find both Kyle and I on Twitter at Kyle_Marino and myself at Dutton_Tyler. You can follow the podcast itself on Instagram or on TikTok at Gridiron Report, on Twitter at Gridiron Report 1, or you can watch these full-length episodes on YouTube at Gridiron Report. We will be posting all of our over-unders. Guess we could just call that game our overs on social media. Follow us on all forms of social media so you guys can comment and give us your thoughts on the over-under on all those individual player performances. Finally, you can join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That phone number is 313-306-7939. You can leave us your opinions on that voicemail. Again, if you don't want to do it on social media, if you want to come on the podcast in some small capacity, you can leave us a voicemail there. We'll play it and discuss it on the podcast. And then finally, if you guys like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars. Leave us a nice review. Follow us on all forms of social media. We love interacting with you guys there. Thank y'all for listening.
Thanks, y'all. Restore the roar, baby.
Yeah. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired. Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thunder and loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow. 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 Your fandom a vow.